Hey there. Today I want to talk about chord melodies. And a chord melody is simply when you play a melody on the guitar or on another instrument and you harmonize underneath it using chords. They can be simple chords to complex chords, but essentially it is the process of being able to play a solo song where you're playing a melody and accompanying yourself at the same time. I find this to be one of the most enjoyable things about playing the guitar, because I do this when I'm sitting around the house. I'll just be sitting on the couch, pick up the guitar, and I'll have a song in my head. And because I've been doing this long enough, I can harmonize it on the fly, come up with variations. I can reharmonize it. I can play with different harmonic ideas under a melody that I know, and I can typically come up with these on the fly for any song that's really embedded in my memory. So on that note, I think I'm going to start out with some kids songs, some children's songs. I have 3 kids, so we have kids songs playing all the time in my house, and they're in my brain. But even before I had kids, these were things that I would teach to students, young students. And I think that just starting with those is a great place of entry for chord melodies, to help you just kind of basically understand how to build a chord melody on your own, and what are the aspects that you need to think about in order to be able to do that. So once you know how to do it with kids songs, you can move on and you can do it with more intricate, songs that you like, whether that's pop or any genre, really, all the way up to like complex jazz songs and other things. Anything with a real clear melody is a good candidate for making your own chord melody. So a couple things you need to keep in mind when you're doing this is you do need to know the chord tone of the melody note, or the scale degree is another way to put it. I think about those in numbers. So if I'm thinking of a simple children's melody like Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star, yes, we're going to start that simple, because if you can't do it with kids songs, you're not going to be able to do it with pop songs. So when you're thinking about that one, if you think about Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star, the melody starts on the 1, the first scale degree, and goes 1, 1 up to the 5, 5, 5, 6, 6, 5. And in case you're new to that type of numbering, 1 would just be the tonic. I'm going to play a G. So like if it's in the key of G, the 1 would be the first note of the scale, G. 2 would be the second note of the scale, A. 3 would be the third note of the scale, B. 4 would be the fourth note of the scale, C. 5th note of the scale would be D. 6 would be E. 7 would be F sharp. And 1, again, an octave up, would also be G. So we're going to start there. I'm going to go through a couple different kids' melodies. I'm going to take them into different keys so you can see how they lay out on the open chords. And then I'm going to take you into a couple of different pop songs that I like to play, that I think if you're familiar with them, you could probably pick them out too. So follow along with me. I'm going to come in close up of my guitar so you can kind of see what my hands are doing. And let's just jump in. So like I said, important factor you need to know is you need to know your scale degrees. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1 in the key of G. G is a nice key. The open G chord is a great chord to start with a lot of these chord melodies, because you have this whole octave of the scale right there. You can even go down. So depending on the range of your melody, G is going to be a really nice key to start with some of these chord melodies. So Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star is a real easy one. Everybody knows it. So I'm just going to start by playing the melody So that's basic. You might learn that in your first guitar lesson, or, you know, shortly thereafter when you're a kid. And if you're not a kid, which I assume you are not since you're watching this, you may think, this is dumb, I'm going to watch something else. That'd be fine, but I think that this will lead you into learning some more interesting things if you want to stick with me here. So I'm just going to play the melody now, but I'm also going to harmonize underneath it, meaning I'm going to hold my G chord and I'm going to strum through the chord till I hit that melody note. I'm not going to strum the whole chord because that would give me 2 notes on top of the melody note. My melody note is the 1 here. So that's that open G chord. I'm going to strum through the chord to the 3rd string open. And already you can hear that it's going to sound more interesting than me just playing it like this. I'm going to go. Here's the beginning of my melody. I'm playing 1, 1. So I strum through, and then I'm going to put this D on the 2nd string to get the 5. So I got my 1, 1, 5, 5. Then I'm going to go to a C chord because the next chord is a 4 chord in the key of G, which is C. And my melody note goes up to the 6th of the scale, which is E. So already it's sounding pretty nice. And if you have kids, they'd love to, you know, hear you play this for them. A lot of times when I'm playing G, I'm omitting the 5th string, just because I like the way that sounds. You can also hold the whole G chord when you're doing this. But the key is you want the highest note to be your melody note. So again, and that's just kind of the most basic way to do it, strumming every other melody note. But if I want to make it a little more interesting, I can add a couple more little picking in between the chords and the melody. And here my melody's going from the 5 down to the 4. I'm going to go back to the C chord. My melody note's on the 3 there, so I'm holding the bottom of a G chord, playing the open 2nd string for that B note, the 3rd of the scale, the melody note. And then here I've got a D chord, a 5 chord, but my melody note is here, the 2 of the G scale. So what I like to do is I like to wrap my thumb around to get the low F sharp. And this is a D chord. Here's our regular D chord. But since my melody note's down here, I like the way that this sounds. So that's a pretty nice way. You'll see that here it's like I'm adjusting my chord because I know the options of what makes up the chord. I know if I only know that this is a D chord, I can't adjust that to fit the chord melody I'm playing. I need to know how the chord is built and what notes it's made out of, and this is a common way to play a D chord with that low F sharp. I prefer that over, I like my thumb to do that F sharp. But since I know how chords are built, I know that, well, a D chord is just D, F sharp, and A. And here I have F sharp, A, D, and then A again. So that makes a D chord. So my melody, chord melody. So already it sounds pretty nice. Again, this is a children's song. You know, you may not find it all that interesting, but if you can do this, you can do the next steps and you can play more interesting songs, like I said before. So to go from there, the melody goes back up to the 5, 4, 3, 2, 5, 4, 3, 2, and then it repeats the first phrase again. And right here, notice I made some movement by going from G on the bottom. I went to a G over B. And there you have it. There you have a nice little Twinkle Twinkle Little Star. So there's options you can use for reharmonizing. One simple one is that 4 chords and 2 chords A minor and C are very similar tonally, so you can always replace a 4 chord with a 2 chord. I like to do that. There's another variation on it. What I did is, just like the 4 and the 2 chord are very similar, the 1 and the 6 chord are very similar. So I threw in an E minor chord there, and then I had a little A power chord because my melody note was an A. And then I went to that D over F sharp before going back to the G. And this is very simple, but it'll get you on the right track. So another thing you can do is explore different keys. So the open chords on guitar, you've got kind of your main open chords are G, C, D, A, and E. And you can really do this with any of the keys, but certain keys work better with different melodies. A melody like this that's going from the 1 to the 6 is the highest note of the melody, is going to sit really nice in an open G. It'll still work on a C, but you'd have to get into some inversions. So that's a little more complicated, but E, E sounds a little different, but try picking out a simple melody like this in some different keys, starting from different open chords, and you'll start to notice how these open chords lay themselves out and make themselves, give you a different kind of sound to the different melodies you're playing. That's another nice thing about the simple children's songs, is you can just pick them out, try them in different keys, see what works well, and learn about the structure of chords and melodies and creating chord melodies from there. Another one that lays out nicely in the key of C, my Bonnie. So I'm just going open G, so that's starting on the 5 of the scale, going up to the 3. So I'm just strumming my open C there with the 3 on top. This is a D minor chord. a D minor triad. Is a G. That D minor is the same thing as an F6 chord. Some of these chords have multiple names that, you know, a 6 chord would be, an F6 would be F-A-D, which is the same spelling as a D minor chord. So really they're the same thing. And once you understand how chord synonyms work, you can reduce the complexity of chord patterns by noticing that there are certain chords that have multiple names, and really just kind of like where the center, the tonal center is what changes whether it's a D minor, an F6. And in this case, the melody note is going from the 2 of the scale, the D, back down to the 1 of the scale, to make a regular F chord, down to the 6 of the scale. So it's really kind of like a suspension there. And I like to do those little walk-ups and things to make it a little more interesting. Going down to the 6th chord, A minor. Then here, I'm going to hit a little power chord. It's not exactly the way we normally play power chords, but it's A, D, A. It's like a D. Do a G, open G chord with the B on top, 2nd string open. So. And I did a little descending line of thirds to close it out, just as a nice little embellishment. And the chorus goes. F6 again. So doing some of these embellishments that I like to add to these simple melodies to make them sound a little more interesting. Another way to make them more interesting is to vary your picking in your right hand. You can of course use just a pick and just add some rhythmic notes in between your melody notes. You can also do some hybrid picking. You may notice that I use my thumb a lot for like an F chord. I used it for that D over F sharp. I like to keep my hand motion as economical as possible so that I'm not, you know, having to do all these reaches. Bar chords, you know, are fine, but a lot of times I use my thumb for them because for me that's just a little easier. And what I've learned over the years is that the more comfortable my hand position is in my left hand, the more relaxed I play, and so my time is better. And it just helps me reach things more easily. It's real comfortable for my hand. I don't have the biggest hands, so maybe your hand, I mean, obviously your hands are going to be different than mine, obviously, but the way that works for me just makes it so that chords feel nice and comfortable. I can just rest my palm on the back of the guitar and hit those lower notes with my thumb a lot of the time. Not always, but obviously play around with it and see what works well for you. Another key that you could do that in is A. This is going to involve a little more variation beyond just your regular open chords, but the A chord is nice because it has the triad in second version right here. That open B is the 2 of the scale. Another key that you could do it in is D. So simple melodies like this are just nice to explore the open chords on the guitar and to see what melodies fit into what chord shapes the best. Obviously you could do it in G too, but I'm not going to go over that. So those are 2 examples of real simple little children's songs that can help you explore this idea and lay a foundation for you to build your own chord melodies. So a lot of times when you're doing chord melodies, you're going to have to make a variation of the chord. You may have noticed, like when I'm playing in the key of A, this is not like a open chord. I'm holding one note, just holding that 2nd fret on the 3rd string, but it's a D chord in my mind, a D6. That B note, the melody note is on the 6th of the D chord, or the 2nd scale degree of A, which is the key that we're in. So I make my chord fit the melody. I'm not trying to play a full D chord and then figure out, where's that note? Because it's not there. I would have to let go there. And then when I came down here, I'm playing just a little 3rd on the A. And if you know your inversions, of course, that's going to help. And I've gone into, in a couple of lessons, the way I think about triads and what I call the big 3 triad shapes. I will go over those again at some point because it's just something that I think bears repeating and can help a lot of people with their just basic understanding of how to move across the neck, but I'm not going to go into that now. What I wanted to go on to next is a little more of an interesting song that you probably know, an old pop song, an old Beatles song called In My Life, which I used to play back a few years back when I was doing a lot of solo guitar for weddings and wedding ceremonies and stuff. This was a common song I would play. And just for context, like the usefulness of these ideas is very high. When I would get hired to play these weddings, essentially I had in my memory banks probably about 30 or 40 songs that I could just play off the fly. I wouldn't even prepare really because I knew them so well. But then I would have to prepare some specific songs that were requested by the the couple. They want to walk down the aisle to a certain song, and so what I'm showing you right now is really the exact same way that I built all the chord melodies that I would play for these ceremonies, or whenever I was playing a solo guitar gig where they wanted kind of pop music and that kind of stuff, or even jazz music. Of course, jazz music famously has a lot of more kind of complicated chord types. That you don't find necessarily in pop music. But even just learning to play pop music, chord melodies will get you on the right path, thinking the right way, because it's the same process that you'd use to create a jazz chord melody. You always want that melody note on top. There are certainly exceptions, times where you can have a melody in the middle of the chord, but as a general rule, when you're learning to do this, having the melody as the top note, and then having some piece of the harmony that is at least one or two notes that gives your ear an outline of the harmony. It doesn't have to be every single note that's possible to put underneath the melody note, because that's just not necessary. A lot of times the harmony is implied by one or two notes, and but when you're doing that, you're able to hear, the listener can hear the harmony even if you're only playing a couple of notes of it. So the example I want to give that's a little more of an interesting example is In My Life by the Beatles. And I used to play this in the key of A. So that's kind of your little intro motif. I'm just holding A chord with my first finger barred across second, third, and fourth strings, and I'm not even worried about the first string here because the melody note starts on the 3, 1, 2, 3, and I am going from 3 up to the upper root note. So I strum through 3, 4, 5, 7, and then I'm playing this E7, which is a closed voicing, meaning it doesn't use any open strings. It's just a basic dominant 7th chord. So that's how I would start it, and then I would go down here. The melody goes 5, 6, then the 2, so I could either play it like this, or I could hold 2 out of the 3 notes of the A major chord and play the open B, because the 2 is there on this open second string. Let me tune real quick. So 5, 6, 2 is the melody note, so I'm strumming through that open A chord with the second string left open for that melody, and then I'm going back to the 1. Then here the chord changes to a 5 chord, E. The melody note is the second scale tone of A, which is that open B string again. And then I'm just moving this finger here to go to the 3rd of the scale. So. And then here I'm going to hit an F sharp minor. I like to do an F sharp minor 7 chord because the melody note is the 7, the open first string. And so I'm playing this common voicing for a minor 7 chord. I normally play it with these 2 fingers, this one barred across the second, third, and fourth string, and this one on the root note. But here, because I need to make sure I don't choke out that first string, I use all 4 fingers here. After I go to that F sharp minor 7, my melody is up at the open E string, and then it goes back down to the 3rd of the scale, and I'm playing an A7 chord. Then it goes 2, 3, and then here I'm going to have a D chord, but my melody is on the B. So I'm just playing just that one note. Then we have a D minor chord, and the way that I normally play that is just by tracing this motion of the 3rd, which would be here, down to the minor 3rd of the D chord, the F natural. So D6, add in that F natural to make it sound like the minor chord, and that's my melody note. I'm back to a regular A major chord where my melody goes from the 5 up to the 3, and then it repeats. A7 to the D chord. And in this case, it sounds kind of cool to have that open A note down here still ring out. And then from here, F sharp minor, my melody's on the 3rd of A. 3, 2, 1, 6, 1. Then here I'm going to play a B9 chord. So this is what we call non-diatonic, kind of like the D minor that happened, meaning it's not a chord that naturally occurs in the major scale of A, but it's a common non-diatonic chord, which means that it's just got a note or two that's outside of the scale, just one note in this case. This note is not found in the natural scale of A, but this is a real common chord you find in a lot of songs, major 2 or the dominant 2. And you see I'm just playing the 9. The 9 is the 2nd note of the B in relation to the B, but up an octave, and then dropping down to that open B string. And then that's another non-diatonic chord, more common. It's like the flat 7 we call it, and it's got this nice little fall from, I just go down the scale there, 4, 3, 2, 1, 6, then back to my A chord. And again, I'm hitting 5, the 5th of the scale, that E down here, up to the 3rd of the scale up here. And then I repeat basically the same thing, at least the beginning. There's my B9 again. And then here's the tag. And then what I play here is an F chord, a C note, which would be the flat 3rd in relation to A, so I hope that's not moving too quickly for you, but I'll play the whole thing slowly just so you kind of see how I do this. And it's possible I'm not playing it exactly like the Beatles recording. There may be some melody notes I'm switching slightly, but to me that doesn't really matter because I'm playing by myself. I'm playing solo. And, you know, especially when I'm playing a solo gig, it's like, it doesn't matter. I can play it really however I want. I can reharmonize anything. But you'll notice there's a lot of kind of finagling I'm doing with the chords to get the melody notes. So some of that flexibility is a little difficult at first to be able to have your basic open chords and to play kind of scalar ideas, melodic ideas with those. Like when I'm playing that F sharp minor, sometimes I go down, I lift up my bar and go down to the open B, or sometimes I might lift my pinky from the fourth string and go to the third string. But that's why I started with the children's songs, because if you can get a handle for those and how you have to manipulate the chords to play the melody with the chord underneath, that's really going to kind of set the foundation right for you. So these ideas are a little bit tricky at first, but they can open up into a whole world of being able to come up with your own cool chord melodies. I have a video out where I showed a chord melody for a song by the Bee Gees called How Deep Is Your Love, and that's exactly the way I came up with that chord melody. This is exact same system of just kind of finding the harmony that fits underneath the right melody note, and you can find that on my website or on my YouTube page with free PDF if you want to dive into a more challenging chord melody. One more example that I have that's a little more advanced is going to take us from the open chord realm into closed chord voicings, bar chords, some seventh chords, but is another classic. It's a Stevie Wonder song, I Wish, and this is a fun one if you want to challenge yourself a little more. The melody is pretty simple, but yeah, it's not going to use any open chords. The song is in E flat minor, and the typical, most common way that people play E flat minor 7, which is the beginning chord of the song, is just like this. It's our A minor shape bar chord without that pinky on there. So you're barring that note. And the melody starts here. The melody goes like this. So the way I'm harmonizing that is I'm going to play this E minor 7, and I'm going to play the flat 3, so I'm going to be speaking from the scale of E flat minor. Really, it's kind of an E flat Dorian minor, which, if you're familiar with what Dorian means, it's just a minor scale that has a natural 6 rather than your natural minor, which would have a flat 6, flattened 6 note. So the scale is going to be that. So I'm just going to speak in the chromatic scale terms. So it's flat 3, 4, flat 3, 2, 1, 6. And the chords just alternate at the beginning from E flat minor 7 to A flat 7. And nice thing about these two chord shapes is they're basically the same. I'm just transferring this shape one string down. So the way I play this, so my E flat minor 7, playing that flat 3, 4, flat 3, 2, and then I'm strumming this A flat 7 chord, dominant 7, up to the second string where my melody note is on the E flat, so that's a 1 of our scale, down to the 6, which is that C note. So when I'm picking it, I'm picking through to the top note, the melody note. You can hear I have a little delay on there. I just like delay. I don't know why. It just makes me feel happy. And I can get some real kind of funky, poppy stuff if I use my hybrid picking. And if you don't know how to hybrid pick, you could practice it just by practicing this. Just hitting one string with your pick and grabbing the others with your other fingers. But it's essentially the same technique, same thing. I'm just trying to accent that top note, just like if I was picking through it. So either way, whatever works best for you. But then here, the chords go B flat 7 to C7, same shape, and then F minor 7 to an A flat minor 6. And then I'm just using my pinky to do this little trick here. Little embellishment, little slide there. It's really just an A flat minor chord that the melody goes 6 and a little wiggle down to the 5 of the A flat minor chord. This is actually the 2, flat 3, 2, 1 of the E flat scale. But it goes back to the B flat 7, to the C7, to the F minor 7, and then to a nice sharp 5, a dominant sharp 5 chord, where I'm barring across all 6 strings. And then I'm playing the 3 and the sharp 5 of that chord, which is would be the 7th fret on the 2nd and 3rd string with these 2 fingers. And the important thing about this chord is that I don't want to hear the note on the 5th string. I want that to be muted. So I can either kind of curve my finger a little bit to hit the low note and bar the high 2 string, or I guess it's the 4th string and the 1st string with like these parts of my finger here and here, which is a little tricky, but you can figure out how it works best for you. If you want to grab it with 5 fingers, that's another way to do this chord. But so let me play that change, that B section. So my melody note's on the 2nd string, so I'm not playing the 1st string here. The change. we get to the chorus there, there's a little pentatonic walk up. And now your melody note is that highest note of that E flat minor 7 chord. Then it's the highest note of the A flat 7. Back to the highest note, the 5th on the E minor 7, E flat minor 7 chord. And that's how that chorus goes. And that's basically the whole structure, kind of the basic structure of that song. Like I said, obviously that one's a lot more complex than where we started with, with Twinkle Twinkle Little Star. But it's all based on the same exact architecture and the same way of putting your melody note on top, finding the melody note within a chord shape that supports it, and with this you can take this idea way beyond the basic children's songs, and you can get into some more complex songs that you would be really interested in working up some kind of solo piece to. And as you get good at this, you'll eventually you'll be able to really make chord melodies for any songs that you want. So that's about it for this video. I said this before, but this is really probably the most enjoyable thing for me on the guitar. I love to sit around and just make up chord melodies, and I have a very melodic mind. I always think, even when I'm like soloing and playing leads, I'm thinking about melodies. And so I think that I started learning guitar by I got hooked on guitar from learning a couple songs from a buddy of mine at a sleepover when I was 12 years old. And I didn't have a guitar, but I did find an old broken ukulele at a church rummage sale. And I was so into it that I had a friend that played, and so he gave me some old busted guitar strings. I strung up the ukulele with an old guitar string, and I would sit around and I'd just pluck little melodies. I think like Ode to Joy was a song that I knew. I knew some songs from church growing up, just melodies, and I would just pluck them out, and some pop songs. And so learning to play chord melodies was kind of a natural outgrowth of that for me. A lot of the joy of music for me is just being able to sit down and play songs. Of course, it's really fun to play leads, to be playing with a big band and have that moment where you get to kind of shine with all of your techniques and all of your interesting kind of sounds and ideas you can come up with. But really, the chord melodies are the most enjoyable over time for me. And so I hope that some of the things that I showed you in this lesson were helpful. If you have any questions, just go ahead and ask, leave it in the comments, and I'll try to address any specific questions you might have. But it's been maybe over a year since I've posted something, and in that time, a lot has happened. We had our third kid a little over a year ago, and I was on the road a lot in the last year, and I'm renovating my house here in Nashville, and it's just been a lot. But I've got my setup ready to roll here, so I'm just gonna kind of start throwing out some ideas and see if anybody is connecting with them. And so with that in mind, if you have any topics that you'd like me to cover, specific questions you have, just let me know. You can shoot me an email at trent@practicemakesbettermusic.com, or you can just leave a comment either on my webpage or on YouTube. And I've been hearing from some people, and it's really nice to hear from you guys and to hear what is working for you and what you like about the lessons or what maybe could be better. So feel free to reach out. I'm available, and I want to help you reach your goals, whether that's just to enjoy playing music more, enjoy sitting around and plucking around on the guitar, and just have that fulfillment that is just a human fulfillment of just making music. Music is for everyone, no matter what level that you do it at. Or if your goals are a little loftier, like you'd like to have your own band, or you want to learn how to become a professional full-time musician. These are all things that I've done and I continue to do and I'm interested in. And so I want to be available for anybody that I can help. So I think that's all for today. And until next time, practice hard and enjoy yourself.